Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. Juice, I've never done that before. I got so excited to talk to you, my friend. I hit the go live button before the countdown. That's when you know we're excited to talk some Cubs baseball. Before we get into Cubs baseball, though, it's been a couple days. You haven't heard from us. I'm Ron Luce, and I am joined. It is the Juice and Luce show today by Mr. Juice himself. He's back from the IL. So for those that remember, Juice was on the IL for a little bit. He went on a little rehab stint this week. Personal matters came up that he had to address before returning to the team. But he's back. We got him with us here on this Saturday night. We're going to talk a little bit about the game, even though they got shit pumped, quite frankly. But it's a good chance, too, just to check in and talk a little general Cubs baseball. It is a Saturday night. Saturdays are fun. It's not quite Sunday fun day, but, it's not too far off either. But, buddy, before we get into everything, enough of me talking. How are you doing overall?
Good, man. I just want to start the show by thanking everybody for all your kind wishes, support, all the things that I obviously I lost somebody dear to me this week. The whole joke was me being on the IL for last week because I moved, as I kind of, prefaced in a show earlier on in the season. I did. I live in right center of Four Winds Field, which is kind of cool. But we had a death in the family, somebody who taught me how to be who I am, and that was my grandfather. He passed away early this week. Great man. We talked about it. That's why we're a little late to the show here. We had a little heart-to-heart because that's I say this a lot, and I said this in the Slack, which is our messaging site for On Tap. People ask me about this company all the time, and they ask me, what's On Tap all about? Why are you guys so close? The answer to that is that On Tap's much more than just a company. It's a brotherhood, something that we very much, look out for each other. We care about people's personal lives, their personal goals, their families. I mean, I've gotten the pleasure of meeting your family. You've had the pleasure of meeting mine. I've obviously have known Buzz for a very long time, and Tony and Nani, and all the guys end up being really close. And I just want to thank everybody for all the support. A lot of our fans, a lot of the fans that when I put some up on Twitter, like, Juice, so sorry for, your losses, anything you need, buddy. We have some of the best fans in this show. I like to think that this show is more than just talking Cubs. It's more like a friendly back and forth. And I just appreciate all the kind thoughts and prayers, and my family appreciates that. And I like to think that the Cubs' recent good play is a lot because Grandpa's watching. He was a Braves fan, but he did get to watch them win a World Series twice. And he was somebody who taught me a lot about the game of baseball, coached me. We have tons of Chicago sports conversations: Cubs, Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks, some White Sox stuff, even though that's not my cup of tea. But I just want to thank everybody for reaching out and being there for me during a difficult time. And I'm back, though. So let's talk about some good things that happened. Obviously not tonight, but maybe the day before, which was kind of fun. The Chicago Haps. And tonight's, kind of cluster game was one to be written off pretty quick. But thanks to everybody for all their kind words and thoughts.
Absolutely, man. And you said it perfectly. A little crack 'em and cheers to you, my friend, to your family, and to your grandpa. Before we get talking a little Cubs baseball, because even like you said, even though he was a Braves fan, the passion for baseball existed. And that's something that we all can love and appreciate no matter who you root for. Unless you root for the Cardinals, then our sympathies are a little less for you. But nonetheless, like you said, we get to talk some Cubs baseball, have a little fun. We got a lot of things that we can actually talk about. I feel like I barely mentioned what I've been doing for the last week. I think anybody that follows the brand has seen that we've been at Wrigley Field a lot in the last week. 5 games in 7 days was pretty cool and pretty tough. I'm not going to lie. So it was a lot of fun to do so far, but we can start from the nitty gritty right now, right? We can talk a little more about the last 2 days. Really, I think of Cubs games. That Thursday's game sucked, folks. It was fun being there, but it sucked. nonetheless, like you said yesterday, the Chicago Haps, only 2 hits. Doesn't matter. Ian Happ, both of them 2-run bombs, gives the Cubs a spectacular win. And with the bases loaded, a huge double play, really kind of almost solo turned there by Nick Madrigal. So you love to see it yesterday. And then, yeah, unfortunately tonight, a brutal loss, but a weird loss, Juice. And maybe this is a good place for us to start because this was a 0-0 ball game in the 7th inning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it ended 7-0, but it was a freaking 0-0 ball game with going into the bottom of the 7th inning. I mean, that's insane to think about. 6.5 innings of baseball with no runs, and then this is your final score. So, Juice, I think that's a perfect indication to how good Drew Smyly and Brandon Woodruff were. It was a pitcher's duel for the early portion of this. Drew Smyly looking great. I mean, the numbers aren't super flashy. Only 1 walk against, but only 2 strikeouts and 5 hits given up. But when you're effective and you don't allow any runs in 6 innings of ball, I don't care how pretty or not pretty it is. If there's goose eggs in the run column, that makes me happy, Juice.
Yeah, it does. It was kind of funny. I joked before the game with the UK group talking about the Chicago Haps, and they had put out a tweet regarding, did you remember when Ian Happ single-handedly beat the Brewers? I said, no, I wanted to be reminded of that tonight. That did not happen. So I put the mush on that pretty quickly. Just shows the luck I've had lately. But no, it was really cool. A lot of this game through the first 6 innings, I'm like, man, this may actually play out a lot like last night's ball game did. But yeah, just some overall thoughts. Yeah, I thought that, obviously Drew Smyly has been unbelievable. The Cubs, for some reason, I don't know if it's Tommy Hotovy, connecting with these guys more than most, but the left-handers have been just fantastic since the break, right? It's been a theme. It's been every time that those 2 guys go out, Steele and Smyly, they're giving you 6 innings of quality, pitching, and it's getting you to the 7th where David Ross can start to use some of these guys. And tonight, he brought in Rowan Wick, and Rowan Wick clearly didn't have it. Some sloppy play around the infield from Morel, but it's twofold on that. I feel so bad for Rowan Wick because he was so dominant in 19 and 20. It was so fun to watch, and then he got hurt. And ever since he's been hurt, it's been an issue of inconsistencies. And I think that we're not getting the full story with him. I truly think that when he did get hurt, there were some issues that, are going to be something that he has to pitch through. And that's why I think we're getting a lot of the inconsistencies with control, with, the velocity at some point seems totally different than what we saw in 19 and 20. And that's what kind of, derails his kind of game plan, because he's that guy that needs that running fastball and that power curve stuff. And he just hasn't had the feel for it ever since he got hurt. And it's been very unfortunate because there's been days where he comes out and you're like, man, like Rowan Wick, that looks so great. But then there's been days where you're like, man, like, why is this guy in the ball game? And you have the 3, batter limit rule. And you're like, man, like even after 1 batter, you can see, and this isn't going to be good. That's kind of the performances we've seen from him. But also too, like on the flip side, this podcast, and me in particular, has sat at the top of the mountain screaming for them to play Christopher Morel at third more often. And I think that in a lot of ways, it's messed with his instincts at the position that he hasn't been there as often. And I understand, Patrick Wisdom is a guy that you got to get out there, and he's had a decent season in terms of power, but like, what's the overall idea and plan for Christopher Morel? Because that needs to trump everything, right, in terms of what this whole development's going to be, and building that next great Cubs team. If you truly want to play him at that position more often than not, because let's face it, the outfield is going to be crowded next year. There's not going to be a lot of at bats for him in center because we're hoping that Brennan Davis gets healthy. And who knows how fast PCA is going to move through the system. And there's going to be Nelson Velasquez that has deserved some playing time and some shots at that. They're still going to have Ian Happ and Suzuki. So you're going to have cornerstones at the corners, and you're going to have to try to figure out who you're going to play in center. And Brennan Davis isn't sitting. He's not coming up to sit. And Wilson Contreras is still going to be on this roster. So you're going to probably DH him more often next year as well. So the DH spot is not going to be there for Christopher Morel unless he's playing. He's not going to be in the lineup unless he's playing the infield. And let's go around it. He doesn't play first.
Mm-hmm.
And Madrigal, the way he's played, I don't think he's going to continue playing like this. But hey, he's earned this statement from me that he deserves a little bit more of a shot going into next year if he continues to play like this. Nico Horner clearly is not going to be somebody that you're taking at bats away for him to play short. So third becomes a position that he has to play, right? If he's going to get in the lineup. He's struggled, sure, over the course of the last couple weeks. There's been some up and downs. You're going to get that with a rookie ball player, but it's just been kind of – I think a lot of the error that he had on that play where he threw the ball away was because he hasn't played the position very often. They said it on the broadcast. He didn't have like the instinct on if he should go and try to play that ball or if he should hang back, or it comes back to instincts of playing the position, and that only comes with repetition. So if he's going to play, he's got to play more often at third because that's clearly where his spot's going to be going into next year. So I attribute a lot of why the wheels fall off. Well, I can't even say that. Why the wheels fell off in that seventh inning was because of that. I mean, it was a combination of Rowan Wick being his spotty self because of, like we said, the injuries and things like that have popped up, and Morel not playing the position as often as he should. So it was tough to watch, but obviously yesterday night, that was so fun to see and sit and watch Ian Happ. I mean, he's been unbelievable, man. I think one of the biggest or the best moves that maybe Carter and Jed may have been not finding a trade partner for Ian Happ, because now I think it kind of flips as some people say the best trades you make are the ones you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this gets them thinking more of, hey man, like our baseball team has played really good in this second half. Let's buy and let's invest in Ian Happ, and let's try to build this lineup with guys like that because they played really good baseball against really good teams as of late. And the last two nights have been obviously a roller coaster, but you're going to get that with a young team.
Absolutely. And incredibly well said. I think that you really hit on all the major points here, the Juice. Really of tonight's game that we can take away from it as fans. Obviously, no runs were scored. The offense overall was pretty abysmal. You're going to get that. I saw in the marquee broadcast after the game, the post-game show, 9th loss of the season where the Cubs were shut out. So, I mean, it's a lot. You don't love that number, but at the same time, we have seen too what happens when this offense does find a consistency to it. You're getting those 4 or 5 runs a game, and they're playing against these good ball teams, like you said, and they're keeping up with them. And I mean, you have to be happy, right? Going into that Cardinals game on Thursday, where I was in attendance. I got to be there with Joey, which was fun, and a couple of other friends of mine came with us. But they got to go into that game against a really good Cardinals team with a chance to win the series. And early on in that game, it looked like they had a shot, right? They fell behind 3-0. They chipped away at it with 2 runs in the second and third innings, and then the Cardinals broke it open. And then that's, really when things got out of hand. And even tonight's game, you can argue the same thing. Drew Smiley pitches so well, and then like you said, the wheels fell off so hard that they became whales because of, just like you said, how and Jack agreed with you here in the comments. And hey, hello everybody in the comments as well and watching us live. I've been seeing the messages. We see you guys. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday night. But Jack says, well, right here to your point about Morel, if you only play him, at third once every 2 weeks, how do you expect him to play well there? And I agree, especially when he's young and he's still a developing player, because they even said, last season, right, when he started to experiment and move around a little more, right? He went from being a everyday third baseman, which is, I think, what the Cubs originally saw him as, to you're going to play third, you're going to play short, you're going to play second, you're going to play center. Now, all of a sudden, right, you're learning 4 positions at once effectively when you've been used to third for forever, and you're still trying to develop at that position. So I agree with you. I think it's one of those things where, hey, this is going to happen. And it's one of those moments where you have to say, okay, he's still figuring out the position at the big league level. Let him do that. And then, in 60 to 70 to 80 games at the position over hopefully the next season or so, is he still making those same mistakes? Then, okay, maybe he's not a third baseman for us in the future, if you're the front office saying that to yourselves. or he turns it around and looks like a great third baseman, and you're like, cool, we have nothing to worry about. Like, this is just growing pains. So I think incredibly well said there as well. And to another Jack comment, he said, what Ross has done well with what he has to work with, and this was in reference to what you said about Rowan Wick, because I almost don't even want to comment on it because it was so mind-numbing watching that tonight on this Saturday night. And it was tough. But like you said, ever since that injury, he just really doesn't seem like the same pitcher. And I don't know. I can't imagine that that's still bothering him, but maybe it's a confidence thing. Maybe it's, he doesn't trust, what he's doing as much because he's afraid to get re-injured. Who knows? I mean, the human brain has a way of doing that. But he says, doesn't get taking Smiley out after 86 pitches. Could have been a part in the lineup they didn't like him against. I think that's, obviously they make decisions and have these conversations in the dugout all the time. But he says, especially after options were limited in the pen last night, which is true overall, absolutely. So I think it's going to be really interesting. Like you said, you brought up a lot of good points. Where's Morel going to play? Is it, it probably should be third. I think you and I are in unison on that. And just the Rowan Wick. Rowan Wick is going to be an interesting name come this offseason, I think. I really think they have a tough decision to make with him. Because of some of the flashes we have seen of brilliance, and then some of these flashes where you're just like, what is happening? So that'll be an interesting.
Yeah, and just to build on Jack's point too. I mean, you look at, and that was the Smiley 86 pitch thing I was kind of alluding to. Both managers kind of overmanaged in two different games, right? I mean, you looked at the way that Peralta was dealing last night, and you're like, man, interesting that they went to the bullpen that quick. Maybe not getting him that extra inning, maybe that buys you more time to put a run on the board. And I've always said this, like, playing behind is way more difficult late in a game than playing from ahead. Obviously, going into the 7th and 8th, you could set your bullpen. I thought that, like, tonight I was in that same kind of boat as Jack said there. Let Smiley go out for that 7th, and maybe that sets up better, or maybe you're able to scratch one across in the top of the 8th, and then the game just looks different, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that maybe that's one that David Ross kind of looks at, and he's like, I can, maybe let him go a little bit, especially the way he's pitched over the course of since the All-Star break and even a little bit prior to that as well. The funny thing is that, yeah, the options were limited, and you're going in, and we're talking about Rowan Wick in terms of his position of the roster, but there's been a lot of guys who have come up and flashed moments of, they're going to deserve some shot next year. So now I wonder if Rowan Wick's kind of roster spot comes into jeopardy because guys have come up from AAA, and you've used Pitch Lab to gain a little bit more depth at the right-handed fireball spot. Rowan Wick was so valuable in 2020 because he did something that you didn't have in the minor leagues. Now it's more or less like, I got a couple other guys that can, get a chance at this position if it's not, Rucker or, I'm blanking on a couple other names, but they'll be, Rodriguez came in, he looked okay last night, but I mean, hey, got the job done. That's a tough spot. But he throws hard.
Nice,
you're
nice having him back too, right? I mean, that's kind of what Jeremiah said too here in the comments. He said, love getting Manning back because a guy that we saw a little bit at the end of last year, right? And we were kind of like, ooh, maybe there's something here with this guy.
Yeah, and he throws so hard, and that's you can't teach that. You know what I mean? It's a lot of times velocity is what velocity is. You are who you are when you get to this level in terms of how hard you can throw the baseball. But yeah, I think it's a decision there'll be a team that takes a chance on Rowan Wick for sure. But you're absolutely right that if they truly believe in the pitch lab in terms of developing these guys and having better spin rates and being put through the system and showing them what they do well and what they don't do well and what they should do more often while they're on the mound, it's going to be interesting to see because Rowan Wick's been through that. He is who he is right now. So he knows what he has to do. And if he isn't consistent, he's going to find himself in, mop-up duty a lot of times. It's going to be a lot of, hey, if we're out of this or we're way ahead of this, just try to save a couple arms for me, in terms of getting to the end of this ball game. And that's when you find yourself like really close to the DFA or, being traded for cash considerations, our favorite player, or a player to be named. But yeah, no, there's just a lot of things that like bullpen guys. It's be consistent, and if he was getting beat around, but he was throwing hard and hitting his spots, hey, tip your cap. That's good baseball. It's good hitting. But a lot of times he's putting men on base. He's missing his spots. He's not the guy who can do that, post injury anymore. He can't put people on, via the walk or missing spots because he's going to get hit around the yard. He just doesn't throw hard enough to do that. But yeah, absolutely. I agree with a lot of what Jack said and the Manny Rodriguez comment. I think that there's a lot of good, that was kind of taken away from last night. And tonight it's like you took a step back in terms of like, man, like maybe some of these guys who aren't on the team are kind of messing this up for the few that, are maybe going to be back. Because I think a lot of us would sit here now and be like, yeah, I'm pro bringing Drew Smiley back next year and look at it as that's another position of need that's solved. And you can never have enough starting rotation arms. So, yeah, I think there's some good to pick out of tonight, but it's also like, man, like a few of these guys who maybe won't be here next year are kind of messing it up for the few that, will be, which kind of sucks. But hey, that's what happens when you have a mixed roster like you do this year because you're not contending.
Yeah. No, incredibly well put, Juice. I think, there's going to be, especially down the stretch here with the bullpen, right? Because some of those guys that we knew were rentals, they were probably going to deal at the deadline that they did. Obviously, Efros being kind of the outlier, Gibbons and Robertson at the beginning of the season. We all kind of were like, oh, hey, if they're not in it and they're having good years out of the pen, they'll be moved. Guys are finding their roles, right? Like, really the only guy that was being put in high leverage situations regularly, Wick was to a fault. But really, it was Hughes, that we started seeing in those situations before the Efros, Gibbons, and Robertson trade. So I think he's really the only one that they kind of know what his role is, but you have Ullman coming up who's thrown pretty well overall.
That's another name I forgot there for a minute.
Yeah, and that's kind of the bullpen right now. You know what I mean? It's
a
lot of guys kind of making names for themselves going into next season because, like you said, if the pitch lab is really going to start churning out these, especially bullpen arms, right? Like if you can bring guys up on minimum deals, you don't ever have to spend big on a bullpen. That's huge. I mean, we saw how, I don't want to say the Kimbrel deal initially hampered the Cubs, but they had a lot of money tied up in one reliever, right? Where like, now if you're producing guys, hey, if these guys, if they're really guys we want to keep around, we pay them a little bit. If they're guys that, are just going to go somewhere else, then they go somewhere else and they can backfill those guys. And then you can spend money in other positions. So
yeah, look how Cleveland did it. I mean, Emmanuel Clase, the guy with the long last name that starts with a K.
Karinchak or whatever.
Carson, I don't know. Even going back, date it back to Andrew Miller. That's the only really guy that they brought over that, was, but just, they were able to, that team that got to the World Series with was pretty much homegrown bullpen arms. Yep. So, I mean, that just seems to be the Carter Hawkins kind of playbook, right? You turn these guys out and then you're able to spend elsewhere, which it's a great point. And I think that's exactly what we're going to be looking at going into the offseason because I think the Cubs, the good news is if you're a Cub fan, they've played well enough since the break that it's put more and more pressure on Jed and Carter and the Ricketts family to spend the money in the offseason and move this timeline up a little bit earlier. And I think that the paired with the success that the minor league guys have had and the quick moves through the system that guys like PCA have had, Caleb Killian and, getting Brendan Davis back. And it looks like they're going to try to push him to Iowa as soon as they can. I know you wrote a great article about that. And then the success, paired with Keegan Thompson, Justin Steele at the major league level, obviously having a guy like Smiley that you're going to be able to offer a contract to who wants to be here. He said that. And, you didn't get – so far we haven't had the most elite Marcus Stroman, but that's coming. He has it in him. We've seen spurts of it. With a full off season and being able to get healthy again, I think that's something that, they can lean on pretty heavily and having that, ace in the hole that's Kyle Hendricks, hopefully getting some of that time off and a full off season to rehab and come back, very strong going into the next year. You have options. And I think that's the the biggest asset that the Cubs have. And now it's more or less, there'll be some big names that they're going to be able to bid on, in free agency and bring into their culture that I think aren't going to hamper at some of the positions that you may or may not be having people. Let's face it, like shortstop, obviously you have Nico Horner. Third base, there's not much of a prospect bottle up that's there. So you can kick out, somebody to third. Second base, I mean, you're looking at guys like Toronto's. That's maybe another 2 years away. There's just really not that depth. And I mean, Mervis, he's been great, but we don't know. He hasn't been here yet in terms of, if he could play the position of first base, and two, can he hit big league pitching? We don't know. It's earlier on in his development too. So I don't think there's going to be, much of a roadblock that's put if you buy position players in terms of like the infield for next year. Cause I think that you can believe in Nico Horner probably at short. We've talked about that, but third, second, and first base and behind the plate too. I mean, there may be a name that we haven't even talked about yet on this show that they find, to be a great fit behind the plate with Willie DHing or, them rotating in some of these bats, like maybe Canario in the next year to, be that DH slot, because just having professional hitters is so valuable now. But yeah, I think that the good news is that's almost moved up this timeline for them to be in on these big players. And if you're a Cub fan, you got to be happy about that.
Absolutely. Completely agree with you, man. There's a lot of moving parts, but it makes it fun because I think, like you said, there's a lot of moving parts that could potentially really accelerate this rebuild. And I think too, what a lot of people are saying, and this not taking a shot by any means at Jeremiah's comment. I think it sparks a good discussion point, and kind of along what you were talking about, right? He says, Rivas less than Mervis. Rivas was called up today, obviously, with the Patrick Wisdom hitting the IL. That was the big news coming out from an injury front today for the Cubs. So he's in. Doesn't do anything super spectacular tonight by any means. But I think with Mervis, what a lot of people forget, Juice, is he was starting down by you boys in South Bend at the beginning of this year. He has moved 2 full levels in one season. A testament to how good he has been, but also you don't necessarily want to rush him either. Maybe you do just want to let him hang out there. And because if he mashes AAA pitching for the rest of the season, maybe you call him up for the last 7 days, right, of the year where the AAA season's over and the major league season's still going. Maybe you give him a couple days then, right? And that way you can start him in AAA next year. Then if he's mashing, okay, you forced our hand, come up to Wrigley, show us that you can do that again, like you said, against big league pitching, because right now we don't know. But he's certainly done it against all other levels that he's faced so far. But absolutely, I feel you there, right? It's just, having a little bit of patience, and there are still a lot of what ifs, I think, around this team going into next year. So areas they can upgrade and so on and so forth, especially if they're saving money on that bullpen. Juice, any other thoughts just on today's game, maybe yesterday's game? I got some final thoughts, just a little, from my little trip over the last week that I'm hoping to share. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to have any final thoughts here too, before we, kind of start to wind this thing down and we look ahead, because the Cubs can still win a series tomorrow.
I tweeted it out yesterday. The only thought I have on the last couple games here that we're kind of we've been diving into throughout this episode is I think that, like, watching Justin Steele, I've fully enjoyed, and him not having his best stuff yesterday and still being able to battle through 5 2/3. I know, and he looked uncomfortable for a lot of the day, so maybe he did have a lower back injury throughout the game. I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth or anything like that, but but for him being able to battle through when you don't have your best stuff, that's like true ace shit. Like, and that's something that I think, when you watch, like, when you watch a young player take the steps, and we've watched him, come from a elite bullpen, 3-inning, close it out at the end of the game, to now it's like, man, like he goes 6 and he looks so great. And, he keeps people off balance, and he's got that slider and the fastball. I feel like we're just seeing like the base of the iceberg for this. Like, we haven't even seen him pull out, he said it in an interview that he's got a curveball. He has a change, like the ceiling, Michael Jordan quote, the ceiling is the roof for this kid. And I truly believe that, like, we watched, while it wasn't the best performance I've ever seen Justin Steele have, we watched an ace mentality out there, which I haven't seen in a Cub uniform since John Lester. And that's no disrespect to Kyle Hendricks, because I love Kyle, but like having that guy who's just going to keep you in every ball game and battle through each at bat when he's not his best, but still have that overpowering stuff. And that's why it's like not like Kyle, because Kyle outthought you as a hitter or as a pitcher to a hitter. But Justin Steele is like, what I'm throwing, I'm still going to get it by you with a runner at second and third and one out because I need this strikeout. And it's 3-2. And if I walk him, bases are loaded, and I'm a sitting duck. So that was so fun to watch yesterday, and him just him get into trouble, escape, because I think you learn more about who he is as a pitcher from those starts, opposed to when the slider is unhittable and the fastball is by you. But this was just like that grinded out ace performance that we haven't seen from a young pitcher that they've developed, name it, since Carlos Zambrano, Mark Pryor, Kerry Wood. Like, you're going that far back. That type of performance of, like, I remember watching Mark Pryor pitch and not have his best stuff and get through 7 innings with giving up only a run. And you look at his stat line, you're like, man, he had a great game. But realistically, if you watch the game, he was fighting himself the whole game. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like Ian Happ was great. Don't get me wrong. They won the ball game. That was awesome. But like watching that 5 2/3 from Justin Steele was just something that made me smile, because I'm like, man, like that is just such a mentality, and that just shows what he's learning over the course of this whole season, and it's clicked. And I can't wait to have him on the pod. We've already talked to him about coming back on again in the offseason. I have so many questions about when did it click? What was the moment? Because I truly think that for a lot of these pitchers, there is that, and he's just been a different guy. It's just been so fun to watch. And I don't know if it's confidence or if it's, they worked on something in the bullpen, or maybe he got some advice. And I know they were talking about, John Lester gave him a call and told him, a few things, but I don't know. It's just been fun to watch, man. This whole battle thing that he did yesterday was beautiful. It wasn't pretty, but it was beautiful.
Hey, that was poetic, Juice. It gets me fired up because, again, not only friend of the program, but just a guy that's so easy to root for. You like seeing this growth. This growth is exciting, right? This is the growth that we as Cubs fans want to see out of guys who, you're going to need those homegrown stars that carry this team into the future. And, Jack says it perfectly. The sky's the limit for Steele. Why not be an ace pitcher? Why not? And he really is. I mean, he's starting to have ace stuff. Joey wrote a great article over at ontapsports.com. Encourage everybody to go read it. Yeah. And I mean, it was an excellent article because it dives a lot deeper into the numbers. Joey's a stat nerd. Don't get it twisted. Don't think that he's not a numbers nerd, because he is, folks. But I mean, he's like the only pitcher in MLB that's top 10 in like whiff rate, in barrel rate, in hard hit rate, and like one other like major underlying statistic. Like, he is essentially pitching like an ace pitcher right now. And this is even over the course of the whole season. We talked about it, Joey, Tyler, and I, on, I believe it was Monday night's show. He's literally got the stats to prove he's an ace pitcher. He leads the team in strikeouts. He leads the team in innings pitched, leads the team in starts by a full 6 starts over the next starting pitcher on this current Cubs roster. Like, he is getting the job done as that guy that shoves. And I love Jeremiah's comment. He says, if you can squint, you can see Lester when Steele pitches. And It's absolutely true. I think Justin Steele is turning into a great pitcher, and a fun statistic and graphic from Tony Andracki, Marquee Sports Network writer. For those, he says, let me read something here really quick, and I'm going to go a little backwards. So it's a top 5 list of lowest ERAs over the last 2 months. So this is since July 1st, minimum 45 innings pitched. The 5th best ERA in baseball belongs to Diamondback starter Merrill Kelly, who's actually on the bump right now over on the south side of Chicago. His buddy, Mr. Zach Gallen, is 4th at 1.87 ERA. Also on the south side, not sure he's pitching tonight, but he's at least sitting in the dugout at a 1.86 ERA. That would be Dylan Cease, Chicago Cubs legend. Justin Verlander, dude's a timeless wonder at this point, ageless wonder, 1.57 ERA.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Tony Andracki's tweet reads, MLB's best starting pitcher over the last 2 months, question mark? That would be Justin Steele, who has a 1.46 ERA since July 1st. The guy has literally been the best starting pitcher in baseball, statistically, since July 1st. He's shoving. Speaking of shoving, just a quick little drop in here. Adbert Alzolay did shove in AAA tonight. You like to see that too. Guy that we'll probably see before the end of the season. But back to the Steele topic. I got to see Steele pitch. Was very excited, especially since he's been hot. I got to see him pitch on Sunday in that what was truthfully a heartbreaking loss to the Brewers. But again, kind of like tonight's game, right? Where it wasn't the starter's fault. It was the bullpen imploding. I mean, I got to watch him up close and personal. I sat in section 12, real close, right behind the Cubs dugout, and just got to appreciate watching him and kind of the facial expressions and him, like you said, kind of fighting himself, because early in that start, he was fighting himself. On Sunday, the first strikeout, he had to throw 6 pitches because he loaded the count. It was cool seeing some of that. But then you saw the settle in, right? Because then the mannerisms changed. Like, you'd have his times where he'd like throw a ball and he's like, all right, that's not what I wanted. And you'd see that reaction. But overall, he had it going. And it's certainly cool to see. And again, friend of the program, he's been awesome to us. And we certainly like it. And just quickly, I'm sorry, Jeremiah. I know I gave you guys a good Boston accent. I cannot give a respectable Southern accent, so I'm not going to try it. I would offend Justin, and that would not be right. So, because he friends has a perfect Southern accent. He's got that deep South Southern accent, which is incredible. But speaking of Sunday's game, kind of talked a little bit about it on Monday's show. Got to continue that after Monday's show. I got to spend a lot of time with the UK Cubs clan while they were in Chicago over the last week. Was an absolute blast. Mike and Rachel are awesome. Obviously, Rachel, friend of the program, she has co-hosted with me here on Cubs on Tap before. But awesome to meet Mike. Got to meet Mike's wife as well, Chris. And they had a good time. But we took in a lot of Cubs baseball. Got to go to the game with them on Friday, as well as Sunday. That was kind of sandwiched around a wedding that I had on Saturday downtown. And then Monday we did a show, and then Tuesday went to both games of the doubleheader. I've never been so pressured in my life, Juice, to buy a ticket to a baseball game, because we went to the day game, and my tie guy was not going to let us not go to the night game. And then Joey was also there.
Good for him, though.
Let's go to the night game. So I had it coming from 2 directions. We stayed. We went to the night game. We took into 2 baseball games. We got to, it's the great Ernie Banks would always say, let's play 2. And it was worth it. It was fun. Got to be in the ballpark with Pat Foley on the microphone, which made it even better, I feel like, because you'd be in the bathroom and, you'd hear his voice on the broadcast. And I was just like, it's magical. It was just a great, and then capped it off Thursday. Mike and Chris had already left. They left on Tuesday. But Rachel ended up coming, meeting Joey and I and my friends up for one last good old style at Murphy's Bleachers before she had to take off and head back to the UK. So it was a fun week. It was good to meet the UK Cubs clan in person. Hopefully we'll be out there next summer and we can party with them on their home turf.
I was going to say, man, like, you guys seem to be just regulars over at Murphy's for all last week.
Oh, yeah.
I was so jealous. Or that was this week. That was last week. This week? Yeah.
Whatever. It all blends together.
Yeah.
I mean, virtually lived at Murphy's Bleachers. Actually, I will say, though, Juice, for the first time after a game, I frequent in Cubby Bear. I've usually done Cubby
Yeah.
Bear earlier in the day. For the
Mhm.
first time, went after a game. Had a really good time. DJ was bumping some good stuff. I was getting a good sweat going. It kept me from gaining weight after all the terrible food I ate over the last week. It was good. It was fun. We had a good time. But yeah, it was just an absolute ball. So much fun. But yeah, we were 100% regulars at Murphy's. I think the best thing, and this kind of went under the radar on Twitter, but this is just a good hashtag crack a moment that I want to share. This is kind of my last thought about, Cubs baseball, at least for today before we move forward. But so we are at Murphy's between games on Tuesday. Joey and his buddy came and met us at Murphy's. And by us, it was myself, it was Rachel, and it was my tie guy. And we were, having a beer. My tie guy was gracious as always. And we were having a good time. We were just bullshitting. We were talking, whatever. And we got all squared away. We're like, all right, we're all sitting in the bleachers. It's game 2. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. So we're getting ready to go into the ballpark, and myself and Rachel go with my tie guy to go to, his usual spot. For those that know, and Joey and his buddy decide to stay for one more beer at Murphy's, just one more. And I'm like, okay, I don't believe you, but okay. And we went into the ballpark, and Joey finally at one point was like, all right, it's time to go find our friends. And he tweets a picture from inside Murphy's, and he says, okay, mission find. And then he tags me, he tags Rachel, and he tags Murphy's bleachers. Whoever runs the Murphy's bleachers count, I want to meet you and shake your hand, because they responded to Joey's tweet saying, you found us, mission accomplished. And I don't know why I laughed my ass off at the tweet, because we had been hashtag cracking them a little bit and having fun. So just the way it was delivered, the way it was executed, I was laughing hysterically in the left field bleachers, and everybody was like looking at me funny. And I'm like, please read this and you will understand why. And they also got a good pop out of it. So a fun story, one of many stories from over the past week, but that one really, Murphy's bleachers, you guys are awesome. We really, there's a reason we go there. It's a good spot.
That's my favorite bar.
I love Murphy's. I love that place. It's the perfect pregame place, but it's also like a fantastic post-game place too, depending on what your vibe you're trying to go for. But if you're just trying to go for the let's hang out and have a good time, that's a perfect spot. Perfect spot. Love Murphy's. Great spot.
1,000% agree with you. It's like I said, my favorite out there.
It is also my favorite. It has grown into my favorite really over the last 3 years now. I love it. I love that place so much. We're gonna have to try and do something with them. We're gonna have our people talk to their people and try to make something happen here. With our friends over at Murphy's Bleachers, because they're awesome. But just a little shout out, because that tweet, I bookmarked that tweet because it made me laugh so hard. I'm like, if I ever need a laugh in a bad day, I'm just gonna go find that tweet and just giggle to myself for 10 minutes because it's fantastic. But Juice, nonetheless, kind of a Cubs week of baseball in arrears. Obviously, we were at the ballpark so much we didn't have as many shows as we normally would. 3 games in Toronto next week on the schedule, an off day on Thursday before heading to St. Louis for a weekend series next weekend. But before we can get into any of that, Juice, the Cubs have a chance to win a series, because tomorrow the Cubs and Brewers do battle yet again. It will be a 1:10 local time start here in the Central Daylight Time Zone. So, Juice, for you, my friend, that's a good old 2:10 start at American Family Field, Miller Park, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It will be, the usual suspects in Chicago. 670 The Score, Marquee Sports Network, where you can catch this one. If you're up in the Milwaukee market, WTMJ 620 in Valley Sports, Wisconsin. That's where you can find that one. This one will also be on Telemundo as a broadcast. For the Cubs, it will be the right-hander Adrian Sampson on the bump. 4.04 ERA on the season with a 1-4 record. As for the Brewers, it is left-hander Eric Lauer. He's 9-5 on the year, a 3.44 ERA and 125 strikeouts. He is a big strikeout pitcher. But there are a couple of guys on this Cubs team who have have hit him just a little bit. So, not saying he's not Woodruff or Peralta or Burns, but he is still certainly a really good pitcher nonetheless. So, my friend, I turn it over to you. Thoughts about tomorrow's preview?
Yeah, I got to keep him in the ballpark, right? Seems like every time you play Milwaukee, they score a majority of their runs via the long ball. Swarmer tomorrow, I believe, correct? I think that's the starting pitcher that was announced during the broadcast, if I'm not mistaken. Samson. Sorry about that. Samson. He needs to rebound after his last start and keep him in the ballpark. Yeah, Swarmer, Samson at this point, whatever.
Potato. Keep it going.
But yeah, just try to scratch out a W, right? I mean, that's win these series and keep it rolling, build some momentum, hoping that Samson, rebounds and he should keep him in the ballpark and he should win because it seems like Milwaukee doesn't do a good job of stringing hits together. It's get them on via the walk or however, and then they hit the long ball, and then before you know it, it's 6-0, 7-0 like it was tonight. They hit 3 home runs, and that was kind of how they won tonight's ball game. Keep them in the ballpark, you got a good shot, and I think that's exactly what they need to do tomorrow. The Cubs come out. It'd be nice too if the Cubs came out and put some runs up early because I don't like all these. Wait till the 7th inning before they get the offense rolling. Be cool and tough to come out with a crooked number and have Samson do his thing in his bounce back start and hand it over to the bullpen, and we'll sing "Go Cubs Go" and get the hell out of that dump they call Wisconsin.
That's poetic justice, Juice. I absolutely agree. Yeah, I really do kind of see the Cubs' old core in this Milwaukee team in terms of style, right? It was a lot of, hey, you got to get on base, usually by the walk, and then, hit those bombs and let the power unleash. They are a very power-heavy lineup. Obviously, guys like Rowdy Tellez can hit the baseball a million miles. Andrew McCutchen can certainly still hit it out of the ballpark. Yelich, who, every blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. He got one tonight. Plenty of power, Adames, all those guys can hit the ball in the ballpark. Keep it in the yard. Maybe, just maybe, the Cubs get a little bit of power of their own, just like Ian Happ supplied in Friday's win. And we can sing "Go Cubs Go" and head from the Cheese City up to the old 6 north of the border in Toronto for 3 with the Blue Jays next week before an off day on September 1st. Juice, I'm right there with you. Another win that if they can win this series, it would be 6 of the last 7 series.
Yeah, it's awesome
that they win. That's nice. That looks really fucking good when you kind of look at this team and say, what did they do in the second half? Second half has been very good to them so far. So I'm right there with you, my friend. Oh, I would love a win on a Sunday. And then we here at Cubs on Tap can regroup as a group, get on the mics, and talk about a dub. But, buddy, before we get out of here, I do want to remind everybody Cubs on Tap is the official Cubs broadcast of the On Tap Sports Network. You can check out all of our great work over at ontapsportsnet.com, at ontapsportsnet on social media. You can also follow the pod-specific accounts for us here at Cubs on Tap or at Cubbies on Tap. That's Cubbies, Twitter and Instagram for those. I am at Luce on Tap on the Bluebird app. Juice is at Juice on Tap on the Bluebird app. Luce on Tap, Juice on Tap, Luce on Tap, Juice on Tap, as our boy Joey would say. He's at Joey Knows Nothing. Tyler is at Teddy Freddy 270. And our great contributors, Bulls Guy Rob at Bulls Guy Rob on Twitter. He does a great job with our minor league coverage. He's got his daily farm reports. Be sure to be checking those out. And Brandon M. Kane does a great job with us as well. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks, you know the drill. Bears won. That's cool and tough as well. We got it all. And again, we think our season's going bad. They got people coming with banners saying "Sell the team, Juice." But our boys at Sox on Tap do a good job covering the Southsiders. So be sure to send your friends that are White Sox fans over to our friends that are also White Sox fans.
Yeah, long ways away from pray for the league, right?
Oh yeah, long way away right now, unfortunately for them. But once again, ontapsportsnet.com, at ontapsportsnet on social media, the OnTap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Juice, just really, 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 really quick. Again, you mentioned at the top of the show how awesome our fans are and how much they truly care and things of that nature. And I'm finding Jack's message here. He said, "Hey, we wanted to say we're all thinking about you the other day. Sorry for your loss, man, and we appreciate our listeners for that reason as well, because you guys are awesome. You guys make doing this a whole lot of fun too. So, Juice, my friend, what do you say? We get out of here the only way we know how to at Cubs on Tap.
Let's go Cubs.
Fuck the Brewers as well. Don't forget about those Cardinals, and let's go Cubbies.